Insects may be small, but their survival holds up entire ecosystems, from the ancient bond between figs and fig wasps to the crops that feed us. As climate change intensifies, rising temperatures and shrinking habitats are pushing these vital pollinators to the brink. In this conversation, I, Dr. Anubha Jain, senior journalist from ETV Bharat, will be discussing with the lead researcher of the study, Professor Renee Borges from IISc's Center for Ecological Sciences, about how heat, habitat loss, and shifting seasons are silently rewriting the lives of insects and what that means for the world around us. Welcome to our channel, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Anubha.
So,
Okay.
first, I like to know about your research study in simple terms.
Right. So you've mentioned some very important factors that humankind and the planet have to deal with at the present time. And you also mentioned the word pollinators. And I would like to talk firstly about pollinators and why we should be concerned about pollinators. And then I will come to talking about the fig trees and the pollination of fig trees. So, pollinators are important for about 70% of the world's crops. Today, we think about rice and wheat as important food resources, particularly in India, or even corn. Corn in many parts of the world is an important. Rice and wheat and corn are pollinated by wind. So the dispersal of the gametes or the propagation of rice, wheat, and corn is by wind. So there are no organisms involved in this process. Because, as you know, the male and female gametes, so the male and female reproductive units, have to come together in order for a seed, whether it's a rice seed or a wheat seed or a pollinated corn pod, or to be formed. However, if we talk about legumes, pulses, the dals that we eat, a lot of the of Indians get their protein from legumes. Yes, a lot of the fruit that we consume, or many of these fruit, require pollination by insects or pollination in some cases by other organisms. So without those organisms, the crops that are required for our micronutrients, for our proteins, for our vitamins, a lot of, if we eat fruit, we get vitamin A. Now, many fruit, as I've told you, require pollination by insects. So that is why we should be very, very worried about the fate of our pollinators in order to acquire these important resources.
Okay, right. So, how did you first get interested, or from where the idea originated in studying the fig wasp mutualism?
Right. So now let us come to the fig system. So fig trees are very important in India. We have a great connection with fig trees. The banyan tree, the ficus, the peepal tree. Many of these trees are around temple areas. They are often considered to be very important in a lot of Indian religions. But as an ecologist, I will say that fig trees are important because they are called keystone species. Now, what is this concept of a keystone species? Now, when we think of an arch, or we want to design an arch, the top stone in the arch is called a keystone. If we remove that top stone, which is the keystone, the whole arch will crumble. Okay, so we ecologists have borrowed this term keystone in ecology, and the fig trees are a keystone species. So, what do I mean by this? Because of the biology of the fig pollination system, which is very special. So, in this system, the pollinators are developing inside the closed inflorescence, which we call figs. Okay, so the fig has seeds, and the fig also gives resources to develop the pollinators. The pollinators develop inside, and the next generation of pollinators moves out to carry the pollen and start the cycle in another tree. Now, what this means is that throughout the year, because the fig flower or inflorescence is the only place where the fig wasp pollinators can survive and reproduce. This means that throughout the year in the landscape, some fig tree has to be producing fruit so that the pollen and the pollinators can come in, can reproduce and move out. Okay, so what is the consequence of this? This means, and we know, that many fig fruit are also used by birds, by primates, by monkeys, by many, even humans eat fig fruit. Yes? But for birds and monkeys, there is often a season in the year when there are no fruit available, other fruit. The jambuls are not available, the mangoes are not available. All the other fruit that the wild birds, the wild monkeys feed on, these fruit are not available because generally there is a fruiting season. But because I told you that the fig is so special, that the pollinators are contained inside and they develop inside the fig, which means that at any time of the year, some trees have to be ready to take the pollinators in, allow their offspring to develop, and to allow the pollinators to go out. This means that birds and monkeys and other animals like bears, they can depend on the fig to give them food the year. This means that they are a keystone species because they support all the other organisms, okay, at any time of the year. So this is why I became fascinated by this keystone group of species, because they are so special.
And as they are so special, and as you mentioned, it's a keystone species. So I think this interaction has become a classic example of co-evolution also, right?
Absolutely. It is a classic example of mutualism. Co-evolutionary mutualism.
True.
What is co-evolution? It is when organisms evolve together so that their adaptations are co-adaptations. Yes? There are about 800 species of figs in the world today, and each species of fig has generally its own unique pollinator species. See, if we think of ordinary other plant species, let's say we think of hibiscus or the rose or the neem tree or whatever, they don't have a unique pollinator.
Mm.
But in
Right.
the case of the fig, for example, that I studied, Ficus racemosa, it has a unique pollinator species. So this pollinator cannot go and pollinate another fig species.
Mhm.
Ficus religiosa, the people tree, has a unique pollinator that can only pollinate the people tree.
Mhm.
Ficus bengalensis, the banyan tree, has a unique pollinator that can only pollinate the banyan tree.
Right.
So there is a very tight linkage. So if the pollinators of the people or the banyan or Ficus racemosa, which is called the cluster fig, if these are endangered because of climate change, then the people will not get pollinated, the banyan won't get pollinated, and so on.
Okay. So, ma'am, apart from temperature, what other climate-related factors threaten the fig wasp relationship? What do you think?
Yeah, so I'll mention temperature first in a little more detail.
Mhm.
So there are many studies which are now coming up which show that at least under laboratory conditions, because these experiments have to be done in the laboratory, many fig wasps die above the temperature of 37 to 38 degrees centigrade.
Right.
We know that even in Bangalore, temperatures are going to over 40.
Mhm.
In many parts of the country, 45. So we are very worried by this because, and this is a part of the story that we still don't know, because fig wasps, we know when they leave the fig, they get blown by the wind. Okay.
Mhm.
But they also go high up into above the canopy level where the winds are strong and then they get blown. So, unless we have good measurements of temperatures at the different heights at which the fig wasps are flying, and these fig wasps only live for a single day,
Mhm.
24 hours to 48 hours. So
Right.
in 48 hours, they have to make the journey to another fig tree. And what are the temperatures at those heights? We don't yet know.
Mhm.
If those temperatures are lethal, the fig wasps will not make their journey. So temperature is an important factor. Besides that, from our own observations, we know that rain affects the arrival of the fig wasps. Okay, so under very heavy rain conditions, when we do our experiments, we don't find fig wasps arriving with heavy rain. So
Mhm.
if you have changing rain patterns, that can also affect the arrival of the wasps. We know that cloudy days also affects their movement. So maybe, if you have too much cloud, unseasonal rains, you have high temperatures, these can definitely affect movement of the fig wasps.
Okay. Ma'am, I'd like to know, how do fig trees ensure a continuous supply of receptive figs throughout the year?
That's an excellent question. So, figs uh, produce all their flowers in these enclosed inflorescences, which undergo development for about 2 months, depending on the species.
Okay.
You might say that the gestation period within a fig nursery is about. Now, all the figs on that tree are synchronous in their development. What does this mean? that all the figs start developing and then they go through this 2-month period releasing the wasps, but it all happens at the same time. Yes, this means that when wasps are released from a particular tree, they will not find suitable figs in the same tree to lay their eggs and start their development. They have to go and find a tree away from them. Yes?
Hmm.
So this means that in the environment, let's say in Bangalore, for example, different trees are in their cycles at different times. So this is how one wasp will be exporting fig pollinators, or one tree will be exporting fig pollinators, and another tree far away will be receiving the pollinators.
True.
Okay, so this is how the cycles are offset. The timing of the cycle is offset.
Mm-hmm.
And this ensures that the pollen is not recycled in the same tree so that there is no self-pollination, but the pollen is carried away by the fig wasps far away to another tree to ensure cross-pollination.
Okay, got it. So, can fragmented habitat or urbanization worsen the risk for these tiny wasps?
Oh, absolutely. Uh, as I told you, we do not know how far these fig wasps can fly, but we know that they emerge with a limited amount of energy that we have quantified in the laboratory. And because they don't have mouth parts, they can't feed, they have to rely on the store of energy they have obtained when they were developing inside the fig. And that amount of energy, it's almost like you have a car with a petrol tank with a fixed amount of petrol. You can't stop anywhere because there is no opportunity for you to stop. So with whatever you have in your petrol tank, you have to reach your destination. Okay. Therefore, habitat fragmentation, which will prevent wasps from reaching their destination with the petrol that they have, which is the lipids in their body, the fat content. So they use the fat deposited in their body to get the energy to fly. If there is no suitable fig tree within the amount that they can fly with that stored resource, they will die and they will not reach their destination. Okay, so that is the problem with habitat fragmentation.
Right. And ma'am, my next question is what cascading effects might arise in tropical ecosystem if fig pollination fails? And also, how does this compare with threats to other pollinators like bees?
Right. So I told you that the fig system is a specialized system. So if a pollinator is lost, that means that another pollinator cannot take its place in the fig system because it is, as we have already said, a classic example of co-evolution. And co-evolution also, if you are super specialized and your resource is not available, then that is a dead end. That is a very, very endangered situation. In the case of bees tend to be more generalized in their food resources. Whether we take the domesticated honey bee or we take wild bees, and India has a huge resource of wild bees, which we should be focusing more upon. But many bees tend to be generalized. So if one resource is not available, they can shift to another resource. So while the wild bees as well as domesticated bees are also under threat due to climate change, because even domesticated bees and wild bees cannot fly when the temperatures outside are, in the 40s. We have data that are coming now from the Indian bee labs and from people who are experimenting on bees, that bees are unable to fly at very, very high temperatures. So this is the problem, many plants could receive the bees and get pollinated by them, but bees may not be able to reach the plants because of the high temperatures.
Exactly. So, according to you, what interventions or policies could help safeguard this fig wasp mutualism?
So the fundamental point, of course, is to prevent habitat fragmentation, to ensure that fig trees are available within the ambit and the flight capacity of the
True.
they have an intrinsic flight capacity. We cannot artificially increase their flight capacity because they don't feed outside. They live only 24 hours, maximum 48 hours outside the fig. If they cannot reach another fig tree within the 24 to 48 hours, we cannot provide them feeding stations because they can't feed.
Right, right.
So it's a mutualism that is fundamentally endangered by a lack of connectivity from one tree to another tree. And that connectivity is the intrinsic flight capacity of the fig wasps.
True. And ma'am, in the end, I like to know how can your findings inform broader insect conservation strategies under climate change?
Okay, so there are a lot of things that need to be done, and particularly, so what I have talked about is, the ambient temperature is 35, 37, 40 degrees. This is very detrimental. That's macroclimate. This is, when we get readings on our phone for Bangalore temperatures, these are temperatures that are recorded in weather stations in a few locations in Bangalore, and it's our temperature. We require a good understanding of microclimate. And what do I mean by microclimate? Climate around a beehive, climate around a wild bee colony, climate around fig trees. Maybe those, if we are able to provide more vegetation, because vegetation helps to cool down, and helps to reduce the spikes in temperature. If we can provide more water bodies, because even bees require water to cool their own hives. How do bees don't have air conditioners, right? When we are hot, we turn on air conditioners or fans. What do bees do? They go to water resources, they collect water, they go back to the hive, and then they, exude that water or extrude that water, and they fan their wings so that they provide a kind of air conditioning in the
Right,
right? But this is at an energetic cost. And if there are no water bodies close to where the bees are, where are they going to get the water to provide this cooling or ventilation in the hives? So we need to provide a lot of pollinator friendly flowers, vegetation, water bodies, so that we can give favorable microclimates.
Mm-hmm.
Macroclimate could be very unfavorable. But within urban landscapes, we can provide favorable microclimates within housing societies, within gardens, within our own terrace balconies, provide water for pollinators, provide nutrients for pollinators. This is how we as citizens can help pollinator crisis.
Exactly, ma'am. Ma'am, thanks for this insightful information about this such an untouched subject we never thought of about figs and fig wasp mutualism. And this information certainly will be very informative and very useful for our viewers. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thanks again for your time.
You're welcome.